Welcome to all of you to the year 2007 Neterian Conference. At this program, we're focusing on the goddess Aset and the teaching of the temple of the goddess Aset. And this program this weekend is very special because we're going to go into the actual hieroglyphic texts that were followed by the ancient Egyptian initiates, priests and priestesses, at the temple itself. And it's something that I have lectured about before, and I've talked about the philosophy of it before, but I've not really done an extensive study, at least what we're going to do today, of portions of the hieroglyphic text. We couldn't do the whole text because that would take weeks, if not months. So we're doing highlights this weekend. But in order for you to gain the greatest benefit from those highlights, I wanted to go over a refresher of the Bedu Neter, the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic text, the basic rules of it, the basic philosophy of it, so you can have that as a background for when we go into the hieroglyphic text of the temple. You will have some a deeper foundation for that. The ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system, often referred to as hieroglyphic, was called by the ancients Bedu Neter. And I would offer a small correction on the file here. It says Medu, M-E-D-U. When it is used in this fashion, you also find in the text M-E-D-T-U, Med-Tu Neter. And it hasn't been changed on this file. And it means writing of the divine words, or writings of the divine. Bedu Neter, divine speech. The individual hieroglyphic signs are referred to as tat, or tut. The tat sign, it means a sign, it means form, it means an image. Its purpose is to make to live the things it renders. So the symbols the purpose is to make to live the things that they represent. And they live in a kind of philosophical realm, a kind of mental realm. Not necessarily in a physical realm of what we would consider the physical world itself. It's a higher and more perfect world that they come to life in. A living rendition of reality. The word religion is translated as Shetat Neter in the ancient Egyptian language of Kemet. These Shetat Neter, the mysteries, rituals, wisdom, philosophy about the Neter, supreme being, are related in the Shetit. This says Shetit, it's actually Shetitu, or writings related to the hidden teaching. So, actually this term Shetitu also means philosophy. It is a translation to what the English word philosophy is. And here, Bedu Neter, divine speech, the writings of the god Jehuti, when he codified the teaching that was given by Lord Khepri in the beginning. Lord Khepri was acting as the beginner. Khepri means beginner or creator. And he was acting as the creator for the divinity Nebuchadnezzar. So he was acting as Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar manifests as the forms of Ra, which are Khepri, the creator, Ra, the sustainer, at noon, and Tem in the evening as the ender. So Khepri is the beginner, Tem is the ender. He's the one who ends things. Nebuchadnezzar also manifests as Amun, Ra, and Ptah, the great Kemetic trinity as well. In any case, Nebuchadnezzar and the former Khepri brought forth a teaching, and he wrote down some things. But really, Jehuti codified them into a hieroglyphic text, a hieroglyphic form, a hieroglyphic philosophy. We're going to go over this a little bit more in the main lecture because it has to do with some specific things about the hieroglyphic text, but I want to give it to you here also. See, in this context, when you use this symbol like this, then it is MEDU. When it's used in the context of Medu Neter, it's Med2 Neter. That's how it's written out. That's why there's a little bit of difference, a little bit of confusion. As a column, this the symbol we're talking about here, Medu, is a staff, like a walking stick. This is the same walking stick that Tim uses at the end of the day. You know, when you're a baby, you crawl. When you're adult, you walk on 2, and when you're old, you walk on 3. And the third one is the staff that helps you walk along because you're old and you can't make it, and you got one foot in the grave and all that kind of thing. And so the Medu is a staff. A staff is a support. So the words are a support for the divine. They are to support the divine ideas in time and space. And why do the words need a support? Have you tried to think about anything in your life without using words for your thoughts? Try to think of something without using words. Can't do it. So the word is like a support for your thought process. It's not a reality, it is a support of it. And that is the important understanding of the concept of language itself. So that means that if you have a limited language, if you have a primitive language, your ideas are going to be constricted by your capacity to think them. Right? And this is one of the really fantastic things about Kemetic language is that you not only have a visual means to support, you have a phonetic means also. And also there are different levels, so we're going to talk a little bit like there's a punning level where you have words that sound like others and they're therefore related in a phonetic sense. Like you can bring different levels of meaning in. And in a visual sense, there are, like for instance, the word ta, or tooth, image. As in Tut Ankh, the living image of Amun. You see the section of the eye of Heru, which gives us this is not a phonetic, in this particular context, this particular word, this is not a phonetic symbol or sign. It is a determinative. It's relating us to the concept of Heru's eye, specifically his left eye. Among other things, there are other levels of meaning for this. There's number as well. There are different levels of meaning, and with those levels of meaning, you can read into the glyphs and into different meaning levels. And reading, what I mean when I say reading, in the context of philosophy, when you read into something, you're reading into its meaning, reading into its philosophy, reading into its teaching. You're not just reading it literally as a phonetic word. You know, this means Medu, but if we don't get into, it's a staff of Ra, it's a staff word. All of that is reading into it. And that reading into it is supported by the usage of the symbol. It's supported by the definition that is given in other texts. There are many different, and also iconographically. Because in Kemetic teaching, the iconography is part of the language. When you go to a temple, You're not just reading the glyphs around, that the images of the divine, gods and goddesses, what they're doing, the artifacts they're carrying, those are all part of what you're reading. Okay? And you read it as part of the language, not just part of, just like like visual pictures in a book or something like that. Now the term Neter, or Neter, is Sarsen created a wonderful, maybe take a picture of that also, of the Neter symbol. Neter symbol is a piece of wood that is wrapped with mummy swathings and in the Kemetic colors, yellow, green, blue. And these represent the colors of the flag of the temple, which you see up here. Take a picture of the flag also. Relating, of course, to the Trinity, or the three levels of the teaching of the temple, the initiation into the temple, the three worlds, the physical, astral, causal, the three bodies, three states of consciousness, waking, dream, deep sleep. All of these are included. And the wrap, so what it's referring to is the concept of the divine being wrapped up in these three levels of time and space. And also the priest who wrote about this said that the Neter is what is placed in the coffin. And in the same way, the mummy is wrapped up as the divine, who is wrapped up or caught up, tied up in time and space. And of course, as you know, the most important mummy swathing or wrapping is the one that goes over the mouth, which covers your capacity to speak. So the idea of the Neter and the philosophy of the Shiritu is to remove those swathings, those constrictions, to allow you to speak, to allow you to move, to allow you to get up out of the coffin and that kind of thing. And in so doing, you become an Ak, or you become one of the Aku. Aks are divine spirit. These are the symbols for the word Shetat Neter. Shetat meaning hidden, and Neter meaning divine. These symbols here give us the phonetic aspect of the word. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 symbols. And this one here is a determinative, which I'll go over, I guess I have it here in a little bit. And this is also determinative, is a scroll. And these lines here are determinative, but they also can be spoken. And when you see 3 lines, 3 vertical lines, it means plural. And the plural ending for the word is u for male, or ud for female. But that's more, go into more detail than we'll go over for this time. For now, just to give you, this is a pool of water, and it means SH. This symbol here means land. A horizontal line with 3 vertical dots coming out of it. This symbol here is like a piece of metal, and it means Ta, or Ta. And these here are referred to as phonetic complements. Well, this one, the vulture, it means A or A. So we have Sh, Ta, and these 2 are phonetic complements because you don't really need them, because you already have the Ta in the symbol for the land. So sometimes a word, one of the things that makes a Neter difficult to read sometimes, because you have many different ways to write a single word, or you may find it abbreviated. You may find Sheta Neter without all of these, and just with these two, and then with the Neter symbol. Or with these two, the scroll, and the Neter symbol. And it's still the same word, it's just abbreviated. So we have TA, A, U, and T. That's how we get Shetaut. And then these are unspoken. The X means duality, and the scroll means abstract. And the vertical lines that we said mean plural. So we have something that is hidden, and something that is dual, and something that is abstract. And then we have multiplicity of that. So something that is hidden, something that is unfathomable, something that we don't know what it is or how it goes, and something that is dualistic. It means that it's we have opposites in there. We have us here, we have it over there. And then we have something that is abstract, something that we can't really pin down, something that we have to use our right brain in order to get into, to think about it and see what it really is. As opposed to, this term could be juxtaposed with the other term, Yan Rutef. Yan Rutef means absence of multiplicity. You follow? So here we have multiplicity we have. So the Shetaut means many things where the divine is hidden. And that could be thought of as all the different teachings that are given, all the different texts is hidden in there, but also is hidden in the world. But really, in the context of Shetaut Neter, which means the religious process, or study about the religious process of the divine, it means that it's hidden in the text, it's hidden in our studies, it's hidden in our philosophy. I'm not going to read through the whole thing here, or perhaps I should. The term hieroglyphs, hieroglyphic, and hieroglyphics. The word hieroglyph comes from the Greek term hieros, meaning sacred, and glypho, meaning inscriptions. The term was first used by Clement of Alexandria. Clement of Alexandria was an Egyptian Greek who lived in Alexandria, and he's very famous, left a lot of writings, he wrote about many things around the beginning of the first millennium CE, in that period where Christianity was coming in. The earliest known dated forms of hieroglyphic writing in Egypt have been dated by Egyptologists at 3400 BCE. The latest dated inscriptions in hieroglyphs was made on the gate post of the Temple of Philae. The Temple of Philae is the Temple of Set, of Isis, in Egypt, in 396 ACE. So you can see here, ACE means the Common Era. BCE is before the Common Era, or after the Common Era. This term here, 396 ACE, means after the Common Era. We're using before the Common Era as BCE. So, well into the Common Era, where Christianity was well established, the teaching of the Temple of Set was still in operation. That's what this means. It was not stopped until 396 by the Christians. And Christianity came into being about 70 to 90 CE. Not 0, 70 to 90 CE. And so we have about a few hundred years of the temple of ancient Egyptian religion still being practiced during that time. The formal hieroglyphic script was used extensively and mostly for formal inscriptions on the temple walls, coffins, and tombs. In many inscriptions, the hieroglyphs were very painstakingly carved with much detail and full color. In some uses, they are rendered in simple outlines. For everyday usage, the papyrus scriptures, the cursive hieroglyphic or the hieratic scripts were used. In the late 4th century AD, it should be also ACE, it's the same thing. But now we're putting this in the context of after Christianity came in. The Roman Emperor Theodosius I, or the first, ordered the closure of all pagan temples within the Roman Empire, and at the time, Egypt was controlled by the Roman Empire. Now this term, many people use the word hieroglyphics when they're referring to the hieroglyphic writing. If you're referring to the hieroglyphic writing, you don't call them hieroglyphics, you call them hieroglyphs. Hiero meaning on stone, and glyph meaning writing. Or the other way around. Hiero meaning in divine script, and glyph meaning on stone. So carved in stone. So you have something that is, the adjective is hieroglyphic. This is a hieroglyphic type of writing. And the noun is hieroglyphs. You don't call them hieroglyphics. You don't say, I'm going to read hieroglyphics. I'm going to read hieroglyphs. And if you go into an academic setting and you use the wrong terminology, they'll laugh at you and they'll look down on you and stuff like that. This is the basic alphabetic aspect of the Medu-Neter script, hieroglyphic writing. Now, what I'd like you to do is just very quickly take your notebooks and translate your name into the hieroglyphic text by just doing a basic drawing. It doesn't have to be super artistic. The R and the D are a little hidden, so we'll try to reveal them. Okay? Anybody need the R and the D? No? You need it?
I need to do.
Okay.
The R is like a mouth.
See that? The hand is a D, and the oval shape is a mount, which is an R. Okay, there are three kinds of phonetic hieroglyphs. Now, mind you, we're only talking about the phonetic hieroglyphs right now. There are other kinds of glyphs. We're sticking to the alphabetic phonetic ones right now. There are some that are uniphonic, which means that they represent one sound. Like the owl represents the sound M. The owl is a special one because it is a phonetic sign as well as a philosophical sign, as levels of philosophy and different levels of meaning. It is a word in itself, meaning in or through, or by means of. Here I have as also. Now the biphonic, they represent two sounds. And these sounds can be vowels or consonants, or they can have both. Like, for instance, this symbol here is a horizontal kind of block with lines sticking up from it. It's like a construction block. And it represents two letter sounds, the M and the N. And usually these, when you speak, when you say men, you're actually, or men, you're actually speaking, it's like an unspoken vowel in there with the E. So it's like, sometimes you'll find it written as M-N or M-E-N. And it means something that's firm, something that's established. But it can also mean, like for instance, this is a good example. It can also be used as part of a word for something else, like the term amun. Can use this symbol here. So you can read into amun from this glyph that amun has something to do with also along with being hidden. It's something that's established as well. You see how you can have different levels of meaning into this. Triphonic represent three letter sounds. And this symbol here, a horizontal, if you can imagine a horizontal mat, like these that we have here, but completely flat, and then you put a little loaf of bread on top of it. That's what the Hetep symbol is. And in a wider context, the Hetep symbol has offerings, it's a mat with offerings on it. And of course, the one that you see here is the standard one they would use, and it is the standard of the highest conception of the Hetep slab, which unites the opposites. So Hetep means becoming peace, but how do you have peace? The only real kind of peace you have in the world is when you unite opposites. Think about that. We can have peace here. Like there's nobody flailing around or nobody going crazy in our room. Nobody here coming in like they do in the world with a gun and shooting everybody up and going crazy. We have peace in here, right? But actually we don't. Because internally y'all are going crazy. Because you're not enlightened. You have desires and you have things. They're calm, they're cool right now, but when you leave here, what's going to happen? So there's really no peace, even when there is physical peace and prosperity. There's no peace there. It's like, think about it like there's a metaphor is given in the spiritual teaching. It's like a snake. You can put it in your fridge. So snakes are cold-blooded. They'll slow down the metabolism, and the snake he won't even be able to bite you. You put your hand in his mouth, and he won't even be able to move. but let him warm up a little bit. Right? Another metaphor that's given, think of little babies, little kids. So cute little babies, and they come and they smile. They poop a little every once in a while, stink like hell, but that's not the real trouble. The real trouble is when they grow up and their desires start coming out and their Ari starts sprouting. You see what peace and peace. So peace can only come, true peace can only come when those Ari are neutralized. When those Ari are only neutralized when you have an awareness of your fullness. The fullness can only come with the dissipation of the duality. Now, until recently, it was thought that the earliest writing system was invented by the Sumerians in Mesopotamia towards the end of the 4th millennium BC, and the end of the 4th millennium is about the year 3100 or so. So this is 3100 before the Common Era. So that's about 5,000 years ago or so, a little more. Because in the Common Era we have, what is it, 2007 years now? So 2007 plus 3100. 5107. However, recent discoveries at Abydos is Abdu, have shown that the Egyptians had an advanced system of writing even earlier than the Mesopotamians, some 150 years before Narmer. Narmer is the reputed first king of Egypt, who started the dynastic era. But of course, even beyond this discovery that was presented in this book by an Egyptologist by the name of, well, two Egyptologists, Vivian Davies and Renee Friedman, in a book called Egypt Uncovered. Beyond this, you know that the dynasties of the ancient Egyptian pharaohs were numbered. You have about 26, 27 dynasties, right? You know that. And then you have the early, or the Old Kingdom has about 5 dynasties. Then you have another 12 in the Middle Kingdom, and another however many in the New Kingdom era, and then in the late period there's some more dynasties. We have come down to about 20, over a period of 3,000 years, they put about 30 or so dynasties. This is the mainstream Egyptological view. But also the mainstream Egyptologists have also discovered a dynasty that had previously been unknown. So before Narmer, now it has been discovered that there was a previous dynasty, and they call that Dynasty 0. So we're joking that now, when they discovered the other ones, they're going to have to call them -1, -2, -3, right? And the reason why we can say that is because the scripture had already said this, and I presented this in the African Origins. There are different sources that tell us this. The dynastic period, the interesting thing about the dynastic period is that it is the period where most of the records are found because they were carved in stone. Most of them were carved in stone. There was a previous period which we may refer to as a wood period, where things were made out of wood, and then they started to be made out of stone, so it'd be more durable. They were made out of wood and mud, and so those things are, you still find some mud structures, but mud structures are easy to demolish, and stone is not so easy, and that's what we find those. And in fact, we have records going back thousands of years earlier than the dynastic period, that the mainstream Egyptologists do not want to acknowledge. But they have had to acknowledge this one because they found the evidences for it, and they could not be refuted. Just like the evidences related to the Sphinx, although they're still trying to work out of that one. Now, the evolution of the alphabet that we have today has been found by the same people to have, and by other scholars to have come to us from the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic text or script. It has been found that now the conservative dating for the ancient Egyptian writing is 3400 BCE. And that led to eventually a Proto-Sinaitic, what is called Proto-Sinaitic, which is the area that is today referred to as Saudi Arabia. It's right next door to Egypt. This is Egypt, the Egyptian. A lot of people don't realize that Egypt was actually, in ancient times, covered not just the northeastern corner of Africa, it also covered a great swath, or most of the land called Canaan in the Bible, the Palestine of today. And so the usage of the glyphs was experienced in the Sinai area, and then it moved to Phoenicia. And this is the Phoenicians are the ones who are, the city of Byblos, and they are usually looked at as the beginners of the alphabet, but it has been found actually that it originated from a Proto-Sinaitic script, and that Proto-Sinaitic script came from the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic text. The Phoenician script was used by the Greeks and other people, not just the Greeks. It's just the main usage. The Arabs, the people who later became Arabs, and many others. The Canaanites, as well as the Hebrews and others, began to use it. And the Etruscans. The Etruscans are the early inhabitants of the peninsula of Italy, which they call Italy, and they are the ancestors of the Romans, the people that we call, the Caesars and the Roman Empire and the Republic that came before it. And of course, after that, then the usage spread throughout Europe, and of course we have it in usage in many other places from there. Now, the forms of the hieroglyphic script. This is the formal hieroglyphic script, and this is from one of the pyramid texts, the Pyramid of Teta. And we're actually going to study part of it later on. This is the Old Kingdom cursive text, which you find on the papyri that usually referred to as the Book of the Dead, the Persian Haru. And you can see that it is basically the same thing, only a little bit more cursive. It's used for handwriting. Later, in the Middle Kingdom era, a script was devised, which is essentially the same, but is a shorthand for handwriting. It's called hieratic. It is mostly used by the priests and priestesses. In an even later period, like about 500 BCE or so, another script was devised called Demotic. And that is a whole area of study in itself. And then after that, the Coptic script was devised, and this is an even closer, shall we say, interpretation of the hieroglyphic text coming into our modern Western script right here. And Coptic was also used by the early Christians. It was used by the ancient Egyptians who were part of the ancient Egyptian religious tradition. It was also used, taken over by the early Christians as well, who lived in Egypt. And when the temples were closed, it remained with the Christian usage. That's why a lot of people associated only with the Christian usage, the Coptic language. The hieroglyphic text can be in both directions, from right to left or left to right, and it can be also vertical, as well as horizontal. So we have here horizontal. Usually you start reading into the text by reading into where the glyphs face. This is the back, and this is the front. See where the god is facing, where the bird is facing. These symbols, the chick, the arm, the forearm here. And this symbol you would not be able to tell which way it's facing. It can go either way. but these you can all tell. So this one you start reading from here, from right to left. Here you start reading from left to right. Here, from right to left, and vertically down. Left to right, and vertically down. Again, we went over this part already, the types of hieroglyphs. Now we're going to go into the other ones a little bit. You have phonetic glyphs, which we talked about a few minutes ago. And then you also have ideograms or ideographic type scripts or pictorial scripts. They picture an object. These signs stand for the object that they depict. Like for instance, this is a heart symbol, and it depicts a heart. You can have symbols that do not depict the object that they are, or do not mean the object that they're depicting. The next kind are determinatives. Determinatives act as non-phonetic glyphs. They give extra information to determine the meanings of words. They help to differentiate between homophones, or those are uniphonic, another term for uniphonic, and they also serve as word dividers. Determinatives designate the relation of the phonetic parts to the object or concept of the word. An example, we're going to have a phonetic plus determinative, and then that's going to equal the meaning of the word. And we went over the shikha, but let's go over it again in this new context. Now you're seeing the parts of the word. These are the phonetic aspects of the word that are coming up here: SH, T, and TA. Plus the determinative of a man sitting behind a wall in a kind of a dua posture. The man sitting behind the wall means someone who is hidden from view, somebody who's behind an obstruction that you cannot see. So here we have the whole word sheta, which means hidden. And remember how I told you before you can have different spellings for these. We have here T and TA. And remember before we had actually also the symbol of the earth, which also means TA. So you can have the abbreviation, but also see now you're missing the earth symbol, which also gives us an indication of something hidden in the earth, or something that can be hidden in matter, in other words. So you see the different kinds of level of meaning that you can read into this. But here we really, on this right here, we're really focusing on the concept of being hidden. So in a word, depending on how you would read something, if we have a text where it's talking about something that is hidden, you wouldn't immediately go and say that it's hidden in the earth, or that it relates to Amun, because you don't have an Amun symbol here. So you would take all those things into account when you're doing a reading. Now, here is another word, and it has this symbol here is like it's a piece of, trying the best way to explain it, a piece of body of an animal, shall we say. This one here, it means KM, and this one is M, and this one is T. And this is a symbol for a city or district. And so we get Kemet or Kemet. The land of ancient Egypt. Any questions?
Justin, because the language can be read, because you read it into the glyph, either left or right or down. Does that mean then that when you have a glyph that's got lettering, for lack of a better word, going across and down, that you have to read it both across and down? Is the glyph giving you a meaning in both directions when you have glyphs? Because I've seen glyphs where you have lettering going across and going down as well. So I'm wondering if it is giving you information both ways. You know,
Which one?
like for example, at the top, you've got, that's fine there over on the left. If, for example, the lettering that's going down there, if it was sitting up underneath one of those at the top, would that mean that you're reading both directions? There's supposed to be a meaning.
You read one at a time.
Okay.
You would read the topmost first, and then the next level, whatever that is. So you start here first, and then you go here. And if there's something in front of you, you'd start that one first. So you see that how many, especially when you go to a temple, it's like almost like every single
Right.
square foot is filled with glyphs.
Right.
But when you start being able to make sense of it, it becomes a lot easier. For instance, like how do you know where the end of the word comes? And that's what we were talking about in the last slide. That when you have the determinative, then you know where the word ends and where to start the next word. Because there's no spaces in it, and there's no punctuation, like here's a period and there's a sentence. So when you see a determinative, you pretty much know that that's the end of that particular word, and then the next word starts after that. So like for instance, if we're reading these two together, you have Sheta Kemet, you know that here you have the end of this word, so that means that's the end of it, it's a hidden Egypt. And here you have the determinative for city, then you can read the next word after that kind of thing.
And weren't determinatives created later to do just that, so that people would know where to stop?
Actually, read the book, and I talk about that there.
Right.
And basically, the language developed in such a way that there were always determinatives even in the beginning, but they developed more as the language, as the culture developed. So they're always there. So, but the further you go back, the more alphabetic the text looks. And I talked about there are some texts in the late period, the Naucratis stela. It was during the Greek period that there was some usage, small, it wasn't much usage of a alphabetic, almost purely alphabetic script, which means that the determinatives were not used, and they're really just using the alphabetic, and that was. I was thinking that was an interesting aspect that would facilitate if one wanted to bring back into usage the language. And then one could add determinatives later if one wanted to, but bring it into, because it would be easier for people who are used to an alphabetic script like we are now to apply an alphabetic. So it would once you learn the alphabet, then you need to learn the words. And that's the matter of memory and usage. Because it's easy to learn a language once you speak it. Because then all you have to do is to learn what the letters are, and you know how to write it out. It's not a big deal. Well, if you're coming from not knowing either, then it's a little more difficult. So that's the basic introduction to hieroglyph text.
Another question. I really couldn't see, but where it has SH, each letter is different. So is there a specific lettering for combination of letters? Is there a specific symbol or sign for combination of letters?
I'm not sure of your question.
So I couldn't see the S. There's a specific symbol for S and one for H, correct?
Yes, there is.
So on what's depicted here at the bottom, SH.
Right?
So are those a combination of SH, that depiction there?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
It's a what we call biphonic, remember?
I see. Okay.
You have,
Yeah.
you have uniphonic,
Got it.
biphonic, triphonic.
Got it.
The biphonic combine 2, and the triphonic combine 3. The biphonic combine 2 uniphonic, the triphonic combine 3 uniphonic. I think of it that way. So.
Are there different letters for different time periods? Because I've seen like in various places like the alphabet, and they'll have like one symbol, then I will compare it to something else and I'll see a different symbol. Are they like, is that just an error that someone made, or do they have different?
I'll have to see the exact listing that you're looking at, but this is the basic alphabetic or uniphonic symbol system from the beginning. But really, there's something to what you're saying. In that, like for instance, the L symbol was also, the R symbol was used for that, and then the late period, the lion symbol was brought in. And for the N symbol, in the late period, also not necessarily later period, the middle period, the symbol of a crown was used also as a symbol for. So it's a some were brought in. I think that can be said, but they were really used interchangeably. So there are a few like that.
Yeah, just a few ideas.
And look at the book because I have them listed. I have the main ones and also the alternate ones also listed in the period when they came in and things like that also.
Yeah, you mentioned about script that was similar, or from what I understood, similar to the script that we use currently in this country to write. Is that information, is that script widely available? Say, for example, is there a textbook which describes the ancient Kemetic script and its similarity to what we write with today in this country, for example?
Meaning from an alphabetic point of view?
Yeah.
No. There are some texts that briefly talk about it, but it's not a big thing, so they don't deal with it that much. And I presented in the book, I presented a little bit on that, a little section on that. I alluded to that issue of it would be interesting to bring it back in that way. And I heard you made a comment about years ago about bringing back the language. Everyone we were in Alabama at the time, you made a comment. Because it's a very difficult thing to do, but it's very, actually I should say, it's very easy to learn the hieroglyphic text to the level of what I presented in the book. If you really get into it, you'll find that by the time you get into like the 10th lesson, you're really like something is clicking and you say, wow, I'm recognizing what this is and all that kind of thing. And to read inscriptions, they use a very simplified grammar. So it's very easy to get to that level. But to get into the text themselves, like what we do today, that's something totally different. For that you need extensive study. And the temple inscriptions are more alphabetic, so they're a lot easier that way also. And they use less determinatives and these, so. But I also presented some pictures of the actual text of what I could find. You usually have to go to Egyptological libraries to get all the, the original stuff, like in New York or Chicago or London, places like that.
I have another question. What is the practicality of learning or resurrecting the ancient Kemetic language? How can that help a culture, community who's trying to rediscover itself?
That's a loaded question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's obvious you have to have your own language if you want to. We've dabbled in it.
We dabbled.
We say dua, and we have the same things. We're dipping the toes in the water. But the real value of a language is that it allows you to think in a context of that language, of the culture and the philosophy of the language. That's the real value of it. That's why the ancient Egyptian priests were saying they should not give the teaching to the Greeks because they have a language of confusion, and it's very flowery. It's like English is very flowery also. You have like 10,000 words and you can say just about anything in English language. A lot of it is meaningless and stupid and nonsensical and foolish or embellishment. But you can transfer meaning of words if you have an intelligible context to bridge between people. And you all here have that kind of context. We've been working together for many years, a lot of you, but you also have a certain level of maturity within yourself. You have a good grasp of the English language, and I have a good grasp of the English language. We can communicate concepts, and since I have a good grasp of the Kemetic, I can bridge that. So, for instance, a Hindu teacher teaching from the Upanishads can bring forth a true teaching through English if you're well. So it's not necessary, but it is beneficial, and it is also helpful. If you can learn Sanskrit, we don't have to learn Sanskrit to learn the philosophy. But it is also helpful then, on top of that, if you can do the ritual of Sanskrit, which means going to doing Hindu a ritual and chants and things like that, to get into the feeling and the understanding of the context of the teaching, which is what we do. If you have a certain level of development, intellectually, psychically, and in your feeling capacity, then you don't need any language. You can transcend language altogether. So it's remember, this is a support. It's a walking stick. It's not the reality. The reality is in a higher context.
So does that sort of allude to a language without words?
Yes. I think I have something a little bit on that in here. A teaching called, well, it's a form of phraseology that refers to what you're saying, where you place the word, the negation on before a word. Like in the context of when we're talking about here of tat or tut, it is recognized in the text that the images of the divine that we're seeing here, these images, they're all tats. They're not realities. They're all images of the reality. But also there is a context of putting a negation on before a word, and you get a transcendental meaning also. Like for instance, there's a phrase called Neterian Conference, which means divinity without name, or nameless divinity, and that's the more abstract and the more transcendental kind of concept of, and that's where the next level of understanding comes in. You know, understanding goes into different levels of mind. You have Anpu mind, which is the context of a canine. It's like a computer. It's on or off. It's yes or no. It's a friend or foe. It's a basic kind of mind. And then you have a context of Jehuti, which is a more intellectual field, to think thoughts back and forth and compare them and reflect on them and things like that. And this is the difference between what animals have and what human beings have. Most human beings have a capacity for real intellectual, but so when emotions and desires trump your intellect, then you devolve to the level of animal, if not vegetable. And that's what we have in this world. So beyond the level of intellect of Jehuti, we have intuition, which is a set. Actually, in between that, we also have something else called Sa. And Sa, it means understanding. And being able, this is where, to give a different context, being able to intellectualize about something is not necessarily understanding something. There are plenty of intellectuals in Washington. They don't understand the meaning of congeniality, of conviviality, living with other people, and in the context of not dominating and being in friendship. I don't think that's really an understood concept. They understand more of domination, and if you want to call it understanding. So Sa is understanding, and Aset is intuition. Aset is, and intuition is knowing without intellectualizing, or knowing without the need for support or props of thoughts. You realize when you understand those things, if you think about it, you're intellectualizing about it and you say, okay, now I see. That seeing is a higher, then you don't have to think about it anymore, because you know. Excuse me?
I just spelled the word S-A-A.
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 So the one who understands is Sahu.
No, Sahu is something else.
What is Sahu?
Sahu is a part of
spirit.
the personality, the spirit, parts of the spirit. You have your Ren, which is your name. You have your Kat, which is your body, your physical body. You have your Ba, which is your soul. Your Ab, which is your heart, where your desires and your Ari is contained. You have your Ka, which is your mind and your desires. And that's where you do most of your spiritual work, your thought process. Then going higher levels of, it's like an onion peel. You have higher levels of body. You have a Kaibit, which is the shadow. And you have an Ak, which is like the Aku, which is your shining spirit. And your shining spirit shines on the world, and that makes a shadow that reflects on the rest of the personality. Your personality is like a shadow then of your higher self, your higher shining self, in that context. And then alongside with that, you have the glorious body. And the glorious body is that's the Sahu. The glorious body is like a golden body. It's like your body of immortality. It's this higher philosophical context, but that's a basic for understanding for now. So you have, and then Ra has those same bodies also. But Ra is explained as a universal. He has a universal Ba, universal Ren, universal, all encompassing, and you have an individual. Wait, you got a question too?
Yes. I've seen, and I don't know, maybe this isn't relevant, maybe later on discussion. I've seen a depiction of maybe a helicopter, and maybe a depiction of a spaceship or something that appeared to be a submarine. What does those things mean?
Trick of lighting. I really examined those two, and people can school anything down here too, and it can look like anything. It depends on your lighting, the way you take the picture. Yes, those pictures look like I saw the helicopter one specifically, and from a different lighting, it looks like something else. So, because there's I suppose I should say also from this in this particular lecture context that as the Kemetic history came to a close, there was some chaos, and and not just chaos, there was also introduction of new symbols by the Greeks who were in control of Egypt that are unintelligible at this point. They're not really known. I'm not talking about the helicopter one, that's a different one. There's some other new ones that are not even known what they are, what they mean. It's like a whole different specialized aspect of the study of Egyptology to get into that. And I mostly focus on the earlier and the middle and New Kingdom era glyphs. But those, I've seen those, and I don't subscribe that there's a helicopter or any of those things.
Questions? How do you come about the utterance of the word, the enunciation, sound, as in?
I talked about it in the book also. There are whole studies that have been done on this, but the sources are, there are Greek words. When the Greeks were in control, they translated words into their own language, so that's one way. There was contact between the ancient Egyptians and the Phoenicians. there was contact with other peoples in Mesopotamia, the Sumerians, and by seeing how they pronounced the Kemetic words, we can tell how the Kemetic words were pronounced, in their own language, that kind of thing. Beyond that, there is also the even better, in some ways, there's a better insight into that from the Coptic, because the Coptic was spoken, it was spoken what they call as a live language up until just a few hundred years ago. The Coptic people of Egypt, and they started changing over to Arabic. But the church still uses the Coptic, although many of the pronunciations have changed. Like, for instance, a word that might have had an E might use an O now, but the consonants are usually the same. And studies have been done by scholars to show how the ruling by which the linguistic change was done. It happened organically, but they have figured it out, so they can backtrack and go back to the original source. So that there have been good ways to tell what the close approximation of the pronunciation was, and not to say also that it was exact, or that we could go back with our scholarship now, and if we were to go back in time 3,000 years and pluck us down into the middle of Canada, and we'd be able to communicate easily. That's probably not so, because the language did change somewhat over a period of 4,000 or 5,000 years. So, right, so it's like the difference between, actually the change is it's less, but to give you an idea, like, it's like the change between Chaucer's English about 1,000 years ago to Shakespeare's English about 500 years ago, or whenever he was around, to the English of now.
Right.
The English of now, we could barely probably read what was 400 years ago, and definitely what was around in the context of King Arthur and all that other age back there, of the time of the Crusades. It's a whole area of scholarship to get into that and to understand, to translate the meaning of some words that have changed and pronunciation of different things. But the hieroglyphic text has stayed relatively unchanged in comparison to that, although there were some changes. And one of the reasons is because the hieroglyphic text had its own specific language that was maintained by the priests and priestesses, while the popular language changed organically. It's like the difference also between Hindi that's used in India and the Sanskrit of yesteryear. The Hindi evolved from the Sanskrit. But the people speaking Hindi today would not be able to go back and speak to sage was just 1,300 years ago or something like that. They have to translate it in. And yet that's why you have Sanskrit scholars and all that kind of thing. Then you have hieroglyphic scholars, then you have scholars of the Maya script and stuff. One last question.
Yes, Sebai. I want to go back to the elements of the spirit, and in EY1 you spoke about the kaibet having locomotion. How is that broken down?
Let's leave that, because that's a different context for this lecture. We'll go ahead and end this lecture, and we'll see if we can get to that and then in the next context. Go ahead, one more. Since we skipped this one.
If you look at the letters, some of the symbols here, like you have the U and then the W at the two shapes. They come over here and say I further and the E stand further. How do you know which one represents what in the
Well, they were used for both. It means that the Czech was used for the U sound, which means a U or a W. So both sounds were used. And it depends on the word they're using to know which one. Like, there are a lot of English words that you use the same letter, but you pronounce it differently depending on the context of what you're speaking. So I'm trying to think of a good one right now. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one, but I'm thinking of something more like something that's even more stark difference so that people can understand.
Name.
You know what I mean? There's some words that you have. I'm trying to think of a good one. It's not coming right now, but you know what I mean. You understand them?
Yeah.
And here, E is it E or E? And also the thing with the read also. See, we're getting into more elaborate or more complicated aspect of the study. In the early period, the vulture was used more exclusively for the ah sound, and then later on the reed was used. So things changed in that way. The glyphs were still used, but they're changed in their usage a little bit. Okay?
Okay.
Oh, but up.
Om Tap.
Yeah.
We'll have a little break and then 2 minutes.